Doug, you have a go.
Okay, it's 7:30 and we're going to get started. Welcome to the November meeting of the Johnson Space Center Astronomical Society. I'm Doug Holland, the president of the JSC AS, and Chris Wells, our vice president, will be running our streaming system for this evening. This is our agenda. For our main speaker tonight, we have Don Selly, who will be bringing us, I have this scope and I want to do astrophotography. That'll be followed up by a members minute that I will do about our first annual JSCAS Astronomy Banquet. And then we'll wrap it up with Star Party News with David Haviland. If you have questions during our presentations, you can put your questions in as a YouTube comment if you have an account that will allow you to do that. Or you can email your questions to the email address on this slide, jscaslive@gmail.com. And I will be gathering up those questions and providing them to our presenters. For Don's presentation, we'll be taking his questions at the end of his presentation rather than during the presentation. But we'll gather up all those questions and ask them of him at the end. So our main speaker, Don Selly with the Houston Astronomical Society. I have the scope and want to do astrophotography. First, let me tell you a little bit about Don. Don Selly started in astronomy in 2003. A year later, he started learning astrophotography, and he is still learning today. His astrophotography experience has included use of both CCD and DSLR cameras and OTAs, spanning the range from a 66mm refractor to a 12-inch Ritchie-Chrétien. In the past several years, he has branched out into shooting nightscapes. Don is still chasing the dream of creating that publication quality prize-winning astrophoto. With that, I'd like to turn it over to Don Selly.
By saying the reason that I put this presentation together is, as I've found over the years that as we get new people into the hobby, it seems like quite a few of them want to get started in astrophotography. And typically they'll buy equipment without any real understanding of what they're getting themselves into. And unfortunately, a lot of them tend to get frustrated and burn out and leave the hobby. So what I hope to do tonight is to give new astronomers or those who are interested in starting astrophotography a little bit of background on the different types of astrophotography and what it takes to do it. I think if we set the correct expectations, we can hopefully help you get started in the right direction and give you an idea about what it takes, and hopefully get you to a point where you're going to be able to be more likely to be successful. You won't burn out, and you'll be able to achieve some good things in astrophotography. But mostly, I just want to help you try and avoid that frustration and burnout that I've seen a lot of. So what I won't do in this presentation, I really won't teach you how to do anything. There's lots of good info online, and I'll talk a little bit about that as we go along. Besides which, my experience is learning by doing provides you the most satisfying experience, and I wouldn't really want to deprive you of that. And you don't really want to repeat my mistakes and bad habits. Besides, there's so much teaching someone to do astrophotography. Astrophotography is so much like work. I'm probably processing my own images anyway. Okay, hope you take that as a little bit tongue-in-cheek. So, in order to put this presentation together again, I asked some. I'm actually a member of the Houston Astronomical Society, and I asked a number of our astrophotographers to help me with material from this list. So as we go through, you'll see some of the images they provided me. But I also wanted to get their ideas about the challenges of astrophotography they've overcome. And as a starting point, I just want to say that uh, astrophotography is a wide river that runs deep. It's full of twists and turns and hides many snags along the way. That's sort of an analogy that I've seen and I like, and we'll talk about that as we go forward. Astrophotography is really aspirational type of imaging. We get into it because astronomy is bigger than we are, and we're passionate about astronomy, and we want to show other people what we are able to see in the eyepiece. And when we first encounter really good astro images, we're inspired. We want to be able to do that ourselves. Um, in the process, we learn by doing, and we continue to improve until we're happy with the results. So we are always aspiring to achieve an image like this. This is the Eagle Nebula. It was done. It was a astronomy picture of the day in June of 2014. It's done by an imager by the name of Adam Block. Those of you who've been around astrophotography at all will recognize Adam's name. He's actually about the most premier astrophotographer there is out there. He actually has made his living by doing it and teaching others how to do it. He's got a very good subscription service if you are interested in finding out more. So this is what we all want to achieve. I've been trying since 2003 to do this sort of an image. This is where we started out. Most of us start out, and these are decent images. And I took all of these images myself when I first got started, and I was very proud of them. But having said that, they're just not the same quality that a guy like Adam Block is able to do. But for a lot of us, this is absolutely just where we want to be. In the process, and here's where some of my friends that provided their comments to me, we've overcome a lot of disappointments. And these are direct quotes from some of the folks I talked to at HAS. Spending hours trying to capture data only to find that nothing I gathered for the night was usable. Setting up equipment only to find I'm missing that one small piece. Biggest frustration, cheap mounts, fittings, connectors, etc. Or equipment, weather, I'm once again behind the curve with PixInsight. That's one I hear a lot. And then this is actually my complaint. I went all the way to Fort Davis in the early days of my astro imaging journey. I got all the way there to find I ended up with my mount dying on me the first night I was there, and so I spent the rest of the week basically light leeching off of everybody else's scopes. But when we do overcome and we start to become successful astroastronomers, it can be a big payback. Here are a couple of quotes. My biggest thrill was finally getting a good image with my own equipment after literally years of trying. Equipment nirvana. Everything works like it's supposed to when the weather, moon, and atmosphere decide to cooperate. Getting published in a coffee table book by the National Geographic. Simply beautiful photographs. Biggest thrill was having more than one person ask if I would sell them a print of my image. And honestly, some of our peers do achieve really good results in astrophotography. This image by Lloyd Overcash is of the same Eagle Nebula we saw that Adam Block did, and it's really rather close to what Adam did. So it is possible to do very well. It just takes a little bit of time and effort and persistence. Helpful background knowledge. It's really the people who seem to do best in astrophotography, starting out, tend to have a fairly significant technical background, or they're very already accomplished at basics of digital photography. Obviously, a knowledge of the night sky and how to navigate it is important, and then the nuts and bolts of how to use your mount, how to polar align, how to troubleshoot electronic and mechanical equipment, um, learning how to operate a camera, whether it be a DSLR or an astronomical camera, and then you also need to have good computer skills because an awful lot of astrophotography involves computer work, uh, not only to capture the images but to process them and make them presentable to show other people. And then you also need to have a willingness to stay informed of new technology developments. I can tell you, just in the time that I've been doing astrophotography, that both the software technology, the cameras and hardware have been the technology development has been really tremendous, and it really helps to stay on top of that. So, a few truisms. What do you need? What do you need to do well at astrophotography? You need to be intelligent, inquisitive, a bit OCD, but above all, stubbornly persistent. Some people would say, especially in my case, a little bit crazy. And if you're already interested in astronomy, you probably fit this description. And uh, again, tongue in cheek, once you have all these skills, the rest is just details. And I just wanted to throw in one last jibe. Of course, you need to have all the best equipment because there's no way anybody can do this stuff with a smartphone, right? Maybe. Smartphone. And when I did this, put this presentation together, the iPhone 11 was the latest version at the time. But phone using a smartphone for astrophotography is actually quite doable. Nightscape photography, in particular, the latest smartphones have settings that can get you reasonable Milky Way photography, and you need to take a look around the internet and see what people are using. I know that there's better stuff out there than this particular image, but this one was straight off the phone, no image processing with an iPhone 11. So you know by now it's better than this. So it's really not a bad idea to if you've already got a telescope, you can start out with a smartphone and do eyepiece projection photography. There's some very good iPhone adapters on the market that can help you align your iPhone so that the image that you want to have you can see on the iPhone itself and on the smartphone itself, and you can take pictures with it. And if you've already got the phone and the telescope, adding this kind of an adapter is actually fairly inexpensive. And here are a couple images of actual smartphone astrophotography that one amateur astronomer I know was able to get lunar. It's not the awesome high definition, high uh, uh, quality image that you'll see in some places, but this is something you'd be happy to share with folks on an outreach event, or, for example, with your family. The same with the image of Saturn. In this particular one was 30-second images and about 10 frames stacked. You can also use a smartphone in video capture mode and do a little bit better than this image of Saturn, in fact. Okay, a few more things. And just remember, these are my opinions. No matter what your setup, there's always an upgrade. This is this has been the story of my life in astrophotography. My wife gets a little bit upset with me when she sees the stuff showing up at the door, Amazon dropping it off. But I'm all. It seems like no matter what you do, you're always going to be looking at a new piece of equipment, and you can tell I've run the gamut of different OTAs and cameras as well. So I'm really going to suggest that you figure out the type of astrophotography you want to do first, and then kind of take a straight line in that direction. Keep your setup as simple as possible, because for one thing, there's fewer points for failure. You have to hook camera, mount, guide scope. All of these things have to work together, and none of them are necessarily made with a systems approach in mind. There's some standards, but it typically requires you to figure out how to make everything work by stringing different pieces of software together. Once you get things working, develop a workflow for capturing your images, and then tweak it a little bit. And then once you're getting to the point that you want to that you're happy with, leave it alone. Use it for a while. I can't tell you how much time I've spent in the process of learning. I get a good image, and then I changed something, and it took months to get back to where I was with a new piece of equipment or software or whatever. And the last thing I'll mention on this slide, it's kind of a truism that once you start to get into doing, fairly good quality astrophotography, you're going to spend almost as much time or more time processing your images as you do capturing them. And that's because none of the astronomy oriented cameras themselves are set up like like your smartphone. Your smartphone has a processor in it and software to help the images come out looking like you'd want them, especially the daylight images. So, and then a few other things. Dark skies are really important, and you need to plan your work so that you don't waste any time under dark skies, because dark sky time is precious. And then typically we'll see questions very often. What's the best thing I can do to upgrade? I want to change my OTA. Blah blah blah. The two best improvements I ever made. The first was to get a really good mount. I went from starting with a Meade LX200. I managed to get that to work, but shortly after I did that, I realized I was spending a lot more time trying to make it work and throwing 2 out of 5 sub images away. Excuse me a second. Sorry, I had to hit the cough button. At any rate, and then I ended up getting a Takahashi M200 mount, and oh boy, did my imaging improve. It was less frustrating. I got lots better results. And then really the best and cheapest way you can improve your imaging is to improve your post-processing skills. That means the time in front of the computer, but you're also not spending new money on new equipment. But To do that, to practice post-processing, that requires data. Good news is that there's quite a bit of free data online. You'll notice I've been displaying a number of images as we're going along that I processed from the Digital Sky Survey and the Sloan Digital Sky Survey, where I actually uh, downloaded the image data off the internet, and because I wanted to learn and I didn't have the quality data I wanted I was able to use that data and improve my imaging skills. So that's sort of the kind of the lead-in information, but now we'll get to the actual interesting part of the presentation here, I hope, and that's we're going to talk about the different types of astrophotography that are out there. I'll give you a little bit of background on typical astrophotography subjects and equipment, etc. Because astrophotography, it's not just one activity. It's I call it a many splendored thing. There's lots to learn, lots to do. Okay, these are the types of astrophotography we're going to talk about, starting with what I would consider the simplest to manage and understand and to get good at. Nightscapes, moving all the way up to high focal length DSO, shooting things like galaxies in high resolution, or planetary nebula in high resolution. And so we'll go through each of these in one by one. One of the things that I want to make sure you also appreciate is that for all of these different types of astrophotography, there's a definite life cycle for you to create your image. You have to plan what it is you want to image. You have to plan for how you're going to capture the image. You have to figure out where you're going to image from and travel there. Once you get there, you've got to set your equipment up, capture calibration frames, and I'll talk about what those are a little bit further into the talk. And then you also have to do pre-processing, which is where you actually do your image calibration and assembly. Post-processing, where you make it a pretty picture, and then hopefully you're going to either print the results, get published, but at the end of the day, you're going to soak up the compliments from all around you. So nightscape photography. I have to say this is the type of astrophotography that I've had absolutely the best results at, and partly that's because it's simple, but the other reason is that through all of the years I was trying to do other astrophotography, I learned a lot about processing, and nightscapes are it's a big part of the doing a good nightscape is processing it well. Typically, you're going to be using a DSLR camera here with a wide angle lens, fast lens, in an f 1.4 or thereabouts. And what you're trying to do, you're going to take some multiple images in order to be able to stack those images and cut down the noise. This particular image was taken at the Prude Ranch, and it's actually at the entrance to the Prude Ranch, and it's actually a 12-panel mosaic. So I took it's 3 high by 4 wide, and I assembled them all into a mosaic. So what makes a great nightscape? This form of astrophotography in particular benefits a lot by having dark skies. because it's so large a field of view. If you're trying to do this in a light polluted area, it gets very difficult to have your image come out looking like you want it to. And um, while a lot of people love to do Milky Way pictures, to really get it done right, you want to have a really nice landscape or a foreground feature that pulls the image together. So it's a landscape picture with the Milky Way in it or the night sky in it. And above all, you really need to know where the Milky Way is going to be in the sky. So when you get there uh, and you try and set up your imaging, you'll set up in the right spot and be able to get the image that you want. This image I also took while I was at the Texas Star Party, and I'd just like to point out with this, there's a couple of things in this image that when I say good photographic composition, what I mean, landscape photography. One of the things that you typically want to do is to have leading lines, and I figured out where the Milky Way was going to be and used the highway to kind of lead your eye from the foreground into the background into the Milky Way. But you don't have to necessarily have an awesome landscape because you can also do things like just shoot constellations. This is the constellation of Orion. I shot out in the hill country, and it's not going to get printed in a magazine, but it's a nice picture you could hang on your wall and be proud of. So what do you need to do nightscapes? What kind of equipment? Well, if you've already got a DSLR, you and a tripod, you're pretty well along the way. You need to have some sort of you can use just a ball head, or I use a pan and tilt type head tripod, and I use a panoramic head, which is optional because I like to take multi-panel images. DSLR or a mirrorless camera, as I already mentioned, a low focal ratio wide field lens, and then some sort of an intervalometer. A lot of the newer mirrorless cameras have them built in, but you can also get them relatively inexpensively as an add-on. So what are the skills that you have? Again, it's just really photographic skills. Focusing in the dark is not as easy as it seems, and it takes some practice. Minimizing noise through planning your subframes and then being able to stack them. And then one of the things that I do pretty regularly when I do my mosaics, I'm shooting the mosaic for the better part of an hour, maybe a little more than an hour, depending on the situation. And the sky rotates quite a bit in an hour, so you have to learn how to do that. And essentially, you have to learn how to post-process where you can put a kind of a composite image of the landscape in the sky. So, required software. I find that planning is a big deal. Google Maps I use a lot. There's another app called the Photographer's Ephemeris. There are a couple others out there now that will do the same thing. Photographer's Ephemeris uses Google Maps, and it will tell you where major features rise and in the sky rise and set, and timing. It helps you with all of that to plan the image that you want to capture. There are a couple of pretty good image pre-processing programs. The big problem that you're going to have to overcome is learn how to stack these images and not get a blurry landscape in the foreground. There's a couple of automatic programs that do that. Starry Landscaper, Stacker, and Sequator. I started out doing this all in Photoshop, and I still tend to do it that way. And then if you're going to also put a panorama together, you're going to need something to help you stitch the different panels of the mosaic together. And then I find that for final finishing, Photoshop works best for me. Okay, total cost. If you've already got the camera, it's not a big deal. The lenses can be expensive, but if you're starting from scratch, you're talking about $1,100 to maybe $5,500, depending on the type of camera that you get. The next type of photography, the next step up is to use a camera tracker. Camera tracker is a device that you put your camera on, and it polar aligns, and it helps your camera track with the movement of the sky. And this particular image caught my eye. Again, it's astronomy picture of the day. It was done on a Vixen Polary mount, and with a basic setup, a Canon 60D camera and a 135 millimeter f2 lens, and it just took a lot of exposure time. Okay, again, what makes a great camera tracker image? I'm going to be a little bit repetitive here. Dark skies. You're going to need to figure out what your target is. These are typically quite wide field images, and so you're going to want to find an area of the sky where that wide field is going to get you a really nice image. So typically we're looking at larger structures in the Milky Way, deep constellation images where you can see the stars in the constellation. And again, you're going to have to learn how to focus your camera in the dark. There are several good ways to do that. I would suggest you find a couple sites on the internet that deal with this. There are lots of good tutorials out there for it. And you want to have a good polar alignment, and again, good photographic composition. So this is a Skywatcher sky tracker that I use. It's actually got my Canon 6D on it, which is a full frame camera, and a 70 to 200 millimeter f4 lens. That I can use the f4 lens on this because I can take longer images as it's tracking. I've actually used this camera tracker without any kind of guiding in it, and I've taken 2 and 3 minute sub exposures at 200 millimeters focal length, so it's very possible to do. Again, the objective here is to have the camera tracker take the rotation of the sky out so that you can take these longer images. There are a couple of different manufacturers that do this. Here's a Vixen Polary setup, and I should also say Ioptron makes a camera tracker as well. All of them do the job. This particular image, I did shoot myself with that. Go back a couple slides with this actual. Whoops. There we go. With this actual setup, the 6D, and it was shot at the 70 millimeter position. It's 45 minutes worth of sub images at, I think if I remember correctly, I did 2-minute images here. And if you're already a photographer, this is probably the quickest and most cost-effective way to get started into astrophotography. The biggest downside here is that you've got to learn the sky. You've got to learn how to point this mount yourself because it's absolutely dumb. It doesn't do anything other than act as a rotator to match the sky movement. But there's always an upgrade. So what you'll see here is I decided to try this camera tracker out with an actual telescope. It's a 50 millimeter Williams Optics Red Cat refractor, and a ZWO camera and a guide camera setup. I don't have the guide cable plugged in, but I did use this, and honestly, I didn't see enough. Personally, I didn't see enough difference in the quality of the images coming through this telescope setup than what I was getting already with my camera lenses. So I don't own it anymore, but I do still own the astronomy camera and the guide camera. So that's the other thing you'll find yourself doing quite a bit. Not only will you buy new equipment, but you'll buy and sell new equipment. So I've already kind of touched on this polar alignment and finding the right field for your image. That's those are the key skills. And then further post-processing and final finishing. Here you start getting into more specific astrophotography processing software. I tend to use Deep Sky Stacker because it's freeware when I use my DSLR, but others use things like PixInsight or Star Tools, that sort of thing. And typically, again, because of the camera cost, you're talking a little higher cost now, maybe $1,600 up to almost $6,000, depending on how deeply you want to go into it with the camera. Next up is it's either a few years ago we called this video astronomy because there were high-speed sensitive video cameras that were used initially. Now we call it electronic assisted astronomy. The cameras out there now have gotten to the point where we have some very highly capable CMOS cameras. They're very sensitive and very fast. And so now, typically, if you're using one of those type of cameras, we call it electronic assisted astronomy. The folks down at the George Observatory, just as an example, have been using this technique for outreaches here over the last several months, and it's a really good means to do astronomy outreach. Okay, this is a typical Malan-Cam setup that again, a video camera approach. It comes with its own capture software. This is a ZWO camera, has it's a cooled camera. You can get it as a cooled camera. Not all of them are, but they're high speed video as well. And a couple of ideas about setups. You can see this goes on the back of an 8-inch SCT pretty well. You do need to have a laptop to do this type of astronomy as well. And again, another quick picture of a setup. One of the cool things about this this movement, this electronic assisted astronomy. Several things. Because you're of the cameras that you're using with the right software and the right filters, you can actually get some reasonable images in light polluted skies. Again, to the basic skills you're going to need, we're going to start talking now about equipment setup and polar alignment. It's not 100% required, but it's desirable if you want to have images that you can process to show online and to your family, that sort of thing. But the technical capability becomes a little bit more key here. And then again, you're going to be using the same sorts of software that we talked about before. Video capture software, image capture software like SharpCap is one of the more popular image capture softwares to do EAA. It's got some really nice features to stack the sub images on the fly and also to do your image calibration on the fly. So, and again, now you're talking a little bit more expensive range because you're going to be using an OTA and a mount, camera and accessories, etc. So the total investment goes up here. Next up is high resolution lunar and planetary imaging. You take your visual observing rig and you can upsize the OTA, and sometimes that means you got to upsize the mount too. And then you do capture images of the moon and planets, many images using video techniques. Damian Peach is one of the premier high resolution planetary imagers, and if you Google him and you want to take a look at some of his images, he's absolutely a master at this. This is really the guy to aspire, the kind of quality you would want to aspire to. So typically you're wanting to have a fairly good size aperture because of the higher resolution that comes with that aperture. If you're going to want to make sure you have excellent collimation as well, because if you're out of collimation, you're going to it'll show. Good focusing is important, but as well, a key element of this type of imaging is the seeing, how steady the sky is. Here's a couple of typical rigs that you'll see. Again, you're typically seeing SCTs to do this work, and a lot of folks are using, again, this high sensitivity CMOS cameras, and they seem to have both the sensitivity and the download speed to do the video that you need to do this work. It's the type of imaging that we call it lucky imaging, because by using video, you have the tendency, as the sky is a little unsteady, you'll get more and more frames in a video, and you'll use only the best images, the best focused images that say maybe you'll shoot 3,000 video frames and you'll use 100. It's that sort of thing. These are a couple images that I actually did early when I first started out in 2003. So again, they're not the greatest, but this is without too much effort, you can get to this quality. I want to point out that the pre-processing requires the use of specialty software to do for lucky imaging. Registax or AutoStacker are the two most popular ones. They'll actually do a lot of the grunt work for you in terms of picking out your best subframes and do the stacking for you. Again, software required. It's again, the key is the stacking software, and then something like image post-processing software like Lightroom or Photoshop or GIMP can help. And again, this is it's pretty similar setup to electronic assisted astronomy. So the kind of total costs involved if you bought everything new is about the same. Wide field DSOs. This is one type of imaging that's very popular, and this you're going to use typically a refractor that is anywhere from maybe 400 millimeter focal length up to maybe as high as 1,000 millimeters. Typically, you're gonna be in the 500 millimeter focal length range, or is pretty popular. You're also going to use a dedicated astro imaging camera. Don Taylor is an astro imager at HAS, and he's a really excellent astro imager. He's the guy that had his image included in the National Geographic coffee table book. This is his setup. It's a Takahashi refractor and a CCD camera. Again, all of the same sorts of skills that you've built up previously, but now you're also looking to have precise guiding because you're going to do longer images, especially if you use what's called narrowband images. This is where you take a filter and you just collect the glow from a bright nebula, which is typically glowing hydrogen or oxygen, and also sulfur is used as one of the is the third color, and it really requires a lot of effort and expertise at the post processing. But you don't have to just do DSOs. Not all targets are DSOs. I mean, this is an awesome image of a comet 214 Lovejoy that Don Taylor did, and if I'm not mistaken, this is the one that ended up in the coffee table book. So, equipment again, polar alignment and guiding are really important. Focusing and maintaining that focus as the temperature changes. Taking excellent flat field images for your pre-processing. And this is, again, pretty much a similar image capture software, post-processing software, all the names that you've seen before. But we're also starting to get more expensive in terms of the equipment. Again, if you buy all this equipment new, a really good mount that tracks exceedingly well is very important. An OTA that the refractors get expensive, and then the cameras and filters can get expensive as well. But you can do pretty well for if you buy equipment on the used market, and also and do be fairly modest in the equipment that you do buy. And the last type of astrophotography that I want to introduce you to is high focal length DSOs, and this is where you're going to use typically a very large aperture and a high focal length to image galaxies and smaller scale objects in the sky. Many of you may know Lloyd Overcash. Lloyd's been around the Houston astronomy scene for a long time, and Lloyd, I using Lloyd as my example here because of all of the imagers I personally know, I think he's one of the best at this, especially this high resolution, high focal length DSOs. So typically, you're going to need a mount that's going to be able to carry a big OTA. The OTAs, 10 inches is a good starting point, but you'll see imagers out there that are using apertures from 12 to 17 inches, and that requires a mount that can handle payloads from 100 to 200 pounds. Also, you're definitely into dedicated CCD cameras, and guiding becomes more difficult because at these higher focal lengths, typically 2,000 millimeter focal length, you're going to be in a situation where any kind of flexure between the main camera and your guide camera is going to give you problems. So you're typically going to use an off-axis guider due to differential flexure. Again, precise guiding, good photographic composition, and again, a lot of this is the equipment that you're putting together. This is the type of image that you can get. Typically, you're going to have pixel scales where each pixel of your camera is going to have a scale of less than 1 arcsecond. Typically, half an arcsecond a pixel is not unheard of, and it just ups the ante in terms of the precision you have to have in terms of capturing the data. Here, really good calibration frames like dark fields and flats are required. Pre and post processing are really important. It just actually the pre and post processing is pretty similar in terms of the technical capability you have to have from doing wide field DSOs as well. And again, pretty much similar required software as doing the wide field DSOs. But the price tag goes up. Putting one of those big OTAs on a high capacity mount is not cheap. So, just in summary, I hope you appreciate now that when you say I want to get into astrophotography, it's very diverse, and starting out with a particular type of astrophotography in mind is usually I think a better approach. It's a hobby that I really love. I've been doing it for quite a while, and every time I do go out and do something, I'm learning something new. I'm having to improve the skills that I have, and hopefully now you'll understand the analogy about the winding river with steep banks. Steep banks can be a steep learning curve. And thank you for your attention, and I'll be happy to take questions now.
Okay, Don, thank you very much for that presentation. We do have several questions for you. First one is your 60D modified?
The actual, hang on, let me put myself, I guess, on. Am I on the screen? I guess. Anyway, I'm not sure I am. Could
You're okay.
stop the share. Okay, there we go.
Oh.
The I've had a couple of different DSLRs that I have had modified. I started out all the way back in 2005 with a Rebel XT 350. I've had a 50D modified. The 6D that I used for nightscapes, I started out unmodified to do nightscapes with, but I have recently had it modified, and I like the results a little bit better.
Okay. Second question is, what method do you use for polar alignment?
It depends a little bit on the mount I'm using. The Takahashi mount that I have has a really excellent uh, polar alignment scope in it that I've been using from the beginning. But I always will also check it. There are a couple of different ways you can do that. Software like SharpCap or PhD, which is a guiding program, have algorithms to do camera-aided polar alignment, and I have used those. I have a mount set up in an observatory out at the HAS Dark site. For that one, I actually do an all sky pointing model and in T point, and let that T point tell me where I need to adjust my polar alignment. So there are multiple ways of doing it.
Okay. Next one is, what is the most difficult part of astrophotography?
Getting your spouse or significant other to understand why you're spending all this crazy time and money.
Okay. You're not the first person that has said that.
I know I'm not the first person that said that. I was warned long ago that that was going to be my biggest problem,
That's
and
hilarious.
it's true. It's proven to be true.
Okay, if you could only have one astrophotography setup, what would it be?
Okay, typically, the rule of thumb has been you want to get a good German equatorial mount and about an 80 millimeter refractor, something that will get you focal length under 600 millimeters or a little less. And then I would get one of these new CMOS astrophotography cameras, the cooled cameras, and I personally would start out with a one-shot color camera. I think you'll make progress quicker that way. If you already have a DSLR, you can get the adapters to stick that on the back of your 80 millimeter refractor, and that's a good place to start too, especially if you already have the camera.
Okay, and last one, let's see, what method do you use for focusing your DSLR for nightscape photography?
I actually have a small Botanoff mask that I've used. But the other way that I can do it typically is I'll find the brightest star or planet in the sky at the time I'm doing it. I'll center that in my live screen, live view image, and I'll focus the lens until that star is the smallest. Zoom in as far as you can on the. Usually it's about 10 times you can zoom in on it, and make sure it's the smallest you can get.
Okay. All right. Well, Don, thank you very much for being our speaker tonight. And we're going to move on. Thank you very much. It's a very interesting presentation.
Thank you for having me.
All right. Very good. Next up, Members Minute from me. our first annual JSC Astronomy Banquet. Okay, so many of you have been saying that you miss meeting in person and going to Mod Pizza afterwards from our meetings. And so we were trying to figure out a solution to that. We contacted the LPI where we normally meet at this week, and they said that they don't really have a projected date when we're going to be able to meet in person again. So we thought, well, maybe we could at least do half of what we used to do when we meet in person, which is go to Mod Pizza afterwards. So we are planning on having our first annual JSC Astronomy Banquet on Monday, November 29th at 7 p.m. at Mod Pizza, the one at Clear Lake City Boulevard in El Dorado in Clear Lake. And if you'd like to participate, send me an email at sdholland777@yahoo.com. If you can't remember that email address, just look on the JSCAS webpage and my email is there also. And if you're not, if you don't remember where Mod Pizza is, it's like I just said, it's at Clear Lake City Boulevard in El Dorado. It's right in front of the HEB. Interestingly enough, the pizzas have actually gone up. This is our old pizza slide from when we used to meet in person. The 6-inch pizza used to cost $4 and something, now costs $7 and something. And the 11-inch pizza, which just cost $7 and something, now costs $9.27. So things are always changing here. But hope you can join us and we'll get together and talk about astronomy and just have a great time. So be sure to let me know if you'd like to participate in that so we make sure we don't overrun the amount of people we can fit in Mod Pizza. All right, so next up we have David Havlin with Star Party News. Take it away, David.
All right, thanks, Doug, and thanks again, Don, for that presentation. And I can't emphasize your comment about keeping it simple when you're starting out. That befell me when I started my lunar imaging projects. All right, Star Party News for November. We have quite a bit to talk about. We've had a number of events in the past 2 months, and I'm just going to jump right in. We had Hack Winery on September 17th. On October 15th, we had the All Clubs meeting, courtesy of HAS and their Zoom channel. On October 16th, we had the Houston Astronomy Day at the George, which really ended up being the International Observe the Moon Night. And we had November 1st through 6th, El Dorado, which overlapped with the club's trip to Fort McCavett on the 4th through the 7th. Hiding out a week from today, November 19th, we have our last Hack Winery event of the year. It'll be our 6th one. Hopefully it will be it will end on a high note. November 17th, we had about 200 people in attendance. Chris Randall, Chris Wells, Bob and Leslie Eaton, Trevor Quinn, and Connie and myself, and a gentleman whose name I cannot remember, but I do have a picture of him. Chris, I think, knows him. We've got Chris Randall's big beast out here. I'm not sure where he was pointing. As you see, the sun hadn't fully set. I was zeroed in on the moon, and this young lady was taking a peek at it as we were going. Trevor was out trying to set up out in this area, and then Chris Wells was helping this gentleman, excuse me, get his rig set up, which was an interesting little rig. Kudos to Trevor and Chris, not to throw them under the bus, but rather to throw them into the high-profile limousine. We had a lady who was disabled and was not able to get out of her motorized chair to observe in the scopes. And the two of them put their heads together. It was mainly Trevor's equipment and the gentleman's equipment. They got it all hooked up so that she could actually see what they were seeing on the screen with EAA. So that was a real big plus. Hack is a work in progress. We've been having chats with them. They've been doing lots of modifications of the facility, and we've just had to kind of adapt to what's been going on. They had a huge tent set up, as some may have known in the past, and I've asked if that could possibly be revised or partly removed when they're going to have the event, have us there. Because we kind of need that deck space. And as you can see, Trevor is standing out here in the middle of the grass. And if it's just rained, that's kind of not the place you want to set up. So you've got things going on there. And we're trying to have discussions with them about make sure there's water available for us and of all things, getting the lonely cheeseburger back on the menu. They've been changing the menu so much that we go down and not sure what we're going to have for dinner. So things are changing in the hack, but it's working. And I'm meant to put that all that commentary toward the last side. But here's Bob and Leslie Eaton getting set up. We're always happy to have them. All right, October 15th, Dr. Pat Ree from Rice University gave us the Texas Nexus observing the upcoming eclipses with appreciation to our speaker tonight, Don and Joe Califf. This is available on this YouTube. They've recorded it and it's on their YouTube channel. And it's a very, very good talk. If you want to go back and watch it. On October 16th, we had the International Observe the Moon Night at the George. We had some high clouds to contend with, but otherwise it was a very good evening. The Research Dome was staffed by Bill Christian with Brad Burgess, Ovido, and Joanne Oliveras, as well as John Spencer. Some of you may know these people. They mainly were using the refractor because frankly, the moon doesn't look very good in the 36. It looks a lot better in the 11. FBAC ran the East Dome, and Jeff Lepp and Wayne Wigan pretty much had it on M13 and M57. I ran the West Dome and was showing the moon the entire night. I'd hooked up my QHY camera and was kind of giving a virtual tour from the north area down to the south and covering the central regions around the Terminator at that time. On the deck was Steve Clayworth, Joe Dillinger, Josh and Christine Rowan, Josh used to work at the George, Charles Gray, and Betty Glass, and the event was very successful. Here's a deck scope here with Steve Clayworth. Here's Bill Christian in the 36. Again, Clayworth here with his little guy. I'm sitting there in the West Dome. And a big appreciation goes to Kavita Self. Now, that name may not mean a lot, but she is actually overall in charge of the George with Tracy Knaus. Kavita is also in charge of the HMNS Sugarland facility. So with her help, we have the museum's attention. And she is spearheading a number of projects to get things going. Right now, she's very appreciative of volunteers and volunteers' time, and was very accommodating as far as the International Observe the Moon Night. She is having us run the George in shifts, in 1 hour shifts, and with limited ticketed admission of only 75 people per in each shift. So no more are we getting this 300 to 400 people and then extras that come onto the deck that keep us there till 12:30, 1 o'clock at night, where we run the risk of volunteer burnout. She has been a great help, and she's actually going to keep things going along that way. And she's working on getting a pavilion put outside that would help greatly during Astronomy Day and other educational events. So she's been a godsend. So if you ever end up going to the George, make sure you talk to Tracy, but also make sure you introduce yourself to Kavita Self. All right. El Dorado Star Party took place on November 1st through 6th, and sadly, sad face, I have no pictures of the event. I wasn't interested in getting pictures of what people took in the way of celestial objects, but I was not able to get any pictures of the event. So again, anytime there is an event that's under the JSCAS banner, we do need to have pictures of the event so we can show what the event's like and help encourage participation. Sliding in from El Dorado, we hopped over and then overlapped Fort McCavitt. There's some of Chris's scopes. A few people ended up going there, and you can see Chris Wells is woefully. I'm just not sure there's enough mount for this scope, Chris. I just not sure about that. But there are a few other people that were there. Again, it's always fun to see the fort. Got scopes down there, scopes here. Changes have occurred at the fort. There were times where Connie and I would actually camp in these ruins, but that's no longer allowed for the preservation of the ruins. So camping is further to the right and off the picture. This was always a fun time there. So I'm also really, really glad we've gotten back into the fort, because we had to cancel the previous 2 or 3 runs because of the pandemic. Then hopefully, as we move forward into 2022, we'll get more people coming out to the fort. And so with things finally beginning to relax, we're hoping to get back to normal. With the Delta calming down, I'm not hearing of any new one coming up. So hopefully people are finally getting themselves vaccinated, and we can get ahead of this thing. So with that, I'd be happy to take any questions. Otherwise, I always finish up with a dorky slide, which is 5 billion years from now, when the sun turns into a red giant and swallows Mercury, Venus, and likely Earth, Pluto's going to be sitting there like, who's a planet now? All right. Thank you very much. And back to Doug.
All right, David, thank you very much for that Star Party news. And let's see, I think it's back online. All right. So that's it for our meeting tonight. Our next JSCAS meeting will be on December 10th, and we will have Dennis Webb, who will be bringing us the scale of the universe in the amateur eyepiece, an observing plan for 18 orders of magnitude. Dennis is the co-author of the Annals of the Deep Sky. He's a kind of a famous guy in the astronomy community, and I think this is going to be a really great meeting. So hope you all can join us for that meeting on December 10th. Thank you for attending.